Technology partners are the unsung growth heroes. This is Partner-Led Growth, a show dedicated to empowering partners to discover the solutions their clients need while growing their ability to take their own revenue to the next level. Your host, Ben Spector, a passionate member of the MSP community for over a decade, will help you navigate the growing partner ecosystem. Partner-Led Growth is sponsored by Zomentum, the revenue platform transforming the partner sales ecosystem, one solution, one vendor, one partner at a time.
Today's guest is an out-of-the-box thinker, an outspoken voice in the conversation around hybrid work, an exceptional entrepreneur with a litany of successful ventures. He's the co-founder of Known4, the CEO and co-founder of Worker. It's Annil Chandel. Thank you very much for joining us today, Annil.
Thanks very much, Ben. That's quite an introduction. Hopefully I'll do some justice in this conversation, but it's great to be on this podcast and great to catch up with you again.
I do like to try and flatter the guests. Always gets everyone off to a great start.
Either that or you're putting under pressure, that they have to deliver and make sure they give the right information to the right audience. So I'll do my best.
You'll be fine. So I'm going to open up with a question, and it's quite a tough question. I don't know a great deal about this topic, so I'm really looking forward to learning quite a lot from you today. And I'm sure that it's going to be the same for our audience. So in your view, what is the biggest problem facing business leaders thinking about hybrid working today?
It's a great question. And, when you posed it to me earlier in the week, Ben, it got me thinking, because I think there's a multitude of different challenges, but what I wanted to do was just set the stage, in terms of people understanding where we've got to now with hybrid working. So in many ways, the workplace has been evolving, since the origins, believe it or not, in medieval times, when the monks needed quiet spaces to write their manuscripts. And that's where the traditional concept of an office came from. And they needed a quiet space locked away where they could continue doing these manuscripts. But since the 60s, when power and sort of the whole prestige of having fancy offices and having the corner office, that's when it became very paramount what the real office environment was about. And since then, I think the last 3 decades, we've gone through quite a big shift in terms of the workplace and what we now see as hybrid working, from what traditionally used to be, as I said, the traditional corner office, to then it becoming large organizations started having open plan spaces to be working together. And then that led on to people wanting to work closer to home. So the co-working spaces came about, and then hot desking came about, and then I guess remote working. And finally, I guess the pandemic sort of put a massive magnifying glass on the way we were working, because we all got forced to essentially work from home and stay locked in a house and not being able to travel or commute to any sort of location. And I think that's when there was an element of euphoria where everybody felt fantastic. I don't need to commute. I don't have to get up very early. I don't have that morning ritual and routine to try to get into an office, but was loving the fact that they were working from home in this particular way. Now, technology became super important. Not that it wasn't already important in a work environment, but for hybrid working, technology became even more apparent for us to be ensuring that we were connected and being able to work in a seamless way. I think that the challenges that it posed after that euphoric start, where everybody was feeling that we could do this and it's great to be working from home, the elements of isolation, productivity, gaps, Zoom fatigue, as we call it today, started kicking in. Is how do you get the best when you're working in this hybrid way? And hybrid is obviously working alone in a space which is not necessarily your physical office, and then being able to transition in and spend time in a physical office with colleagues as you traditionally would have. So software and technology became really important to keep connected, not just people in the physical office environment with the people that are working from a remote location, but also anybody sitting at home and wanted to feel like they were still part of a team, wanted to collaborate, and wanted to ensure that they were being seen and recognized in an organization. So there's a number of different things I think businesses find challenging with hybrid working. First of it, it's just visibility and collaboration. How do you stay visible to the rest of your colleagues, and how do you collaborate almost in the same way as you used to in a physical office? Because in a physical office, you could just walk over to somebody and say, hey, what you're working on, how can I help? Or can you help me with this? Or just even have just a social conversation. And when you're not in the physical space, how do you do that? How do you stay connected apart from WhatsApp messaging and all the type of messages that we send out nowadays through email? How do you stay connected to your colleagues? The other elements of, I think, challenges that organizations are finding are those touchy-feely elements of culture, mental health, environment, just feeling part of something. And those things are not easily replicated when you're not in the physical office. So you have to look at how can you enable those elements as well. So hybrid working in some ways has been quite an eye-opener for many organizations, and the ability to allow people to have this flexibility and work from anywhere essentially. But it's also started to pose big questions in what's working and not what's not working. And I think that's where the technology part is super important, to get the right technology and also ensure it provides you with the gaps that you have in the business, rather than just putting a plaster over something which you think you fixed. You need a long-term solution in anything you're doing. So it's an interesting time, but hybrid working is here to stay now.
It's really interesting hearing you talking around those problems, because I think some of the people listening to this may know that I work with Zementum. I'm currently the only person in the UK. So we don't have offices in the UK. Most of my team are in India. I've got a few colleagues in the US and a couple of other places around the world. And I certainly experienced myself a lot of those feelings of a little bit of isolation. At the beginning, there was a lot of novelty and excitement around working from home, but there does definitely come a point where it can become a little bit draining. I was working on a project in Belgium a couple of months ago. I wasn't massively involved in the project itself, but some of my colleagues from India were traveling to Belgium for the project. So it just made sense for me to fly out, given that I'm an hour away from Brussels. It just made sense for me to fly out there primarily to meet some of my colleagues that I'd only ever seen on Zoom, and to actually spend some time with them. And you're right, it was a really emotionally different few days. I felt very at peace and collaborative and connected to these colleagues while we were sitting in the same room together in Belgium. And then when I come back home and working from home, it's great that I've got a partner here and we've got loads of space to physically work separately and get on with what we're doing. But there is definitely an emotional impact on that, and Zoom fatigue. It's quite interesting. Again, our CTO Raheel posted a message on the general channel on Slack yesterday with the link to the Zoom fatigue Wikipedia article, and saying to everyone, as a company, we need to be careful about this culture. Feel free to say no to meetings. If you don't think you're going to add any value, say no, decline the invite. Don't spend your entire day back to back on Zoom. And it really had me reflecting myself on the amount of time I spend on Zoom. Ironically, sitting here right now, recording this podcast with you on Zoom. But yesterday, I was quite literally back to back to back from about 8:30 in the morning till 6 in the evening, with no space between them. I don't often let that happen, but people have this tendency of, if they see a 15-minute gap in my calendar, they think, oh, Ben's free for those 15 minutes. It's not, it's not like that. It's not like that. But I don't think people realize the pressure that they put on each other by doing that. So how do we solve, you've mentioned technology being a great solution to hybrid working. How do we solve it with technology?
I think that's the million-dollar question, and I don't think it's a case of one size fits all. We live in this wonderful world of SaaS technology now, and products that are integrated with many different other products that you may use. So I think in the first hand, it's about understanding what sits within your current technology stack and what is easy to integrate, both from a user perspective as well as your I guess technology integration perspective. So that's I think where it starts from. Often, we use products like Zoom, for example, what we're using today, Google Meet, Skype, even WhatsApp video, where we tend to use this, and it's been flouted as the solution for working from home or working from anywhere. And the reality is, it's actually not the solution as I see it. It's an enabler, because it does allow you to create a meeting and you can actually conduct a meeting. But what happens when you leave the meeting? Where is your colleague? How do you interact with your colleague in real time? How do you feel connected, rather than only feeling connected with them when you're in a physical space, or you're in a Zoom meeting, or you're in a video meeting with them? So I think that's part of the solution. So I think video these days is very key. I think that's something we've all realized and learned very quickly, even if we were not using video meetings, or video conferencing in any particular way. I think we've all come to this conclusion that video, with software applications and technology today, is here to stay. And it's a huge enabler in terms of how we interact with people that are not in the same physical location. So that's the first thing. I think any application you look at must have some sort of video technology, audio, video sort of connectivity there. But then what the journey, I guess, we went on as Worker was very much focused on how do we replicate the cultural, physical elements of the office environment online. So that people feel like they're still in the office, although we know we're not in the physical space, we're in the virtual office on your screen. So having a screen where you can visibly see your colleagues and stay connected was the key focus for us. So we didn't look at VR goggles or anything like that. For us, it was very much about, we have a screen, everybody has a screen. We know we can use video nowadays. So how do we enable video with an on-screen presence that's in real time, that we can ensure that everybody can see each other, in which actually promotes that collaboration and productivity, because you can walk over, you can tap people on the shoulder, have a conversation, and so on. So picking technology to solve this, one isn't easy, because I don't think there's one size that fits all, and we're all looking for the holy grail of solutions to enable our workforces. And at the moment, I'm only talking about office-based, workers now. We've got a whole sort of section of people that go to work, but they're manual workers, and they're working with machines, or they're working with, physical products that you have to build. Now, how do we enable them, and how do we keep them connected, in your organization as well? So you have to sort of spread out the physical workspace, which is an office, with your factory locations, which is quite different. So in the context I'm speaking about is the office workspace, and how do we keep those connected in this way? So I think, in answer, I don't have a magic wand. I can't really answer it easily, but I think you've got to look for the right information, which we know we all tend to rely on doing Google searching to find information about products today. And often it's the one that comes up top, or the one that I guess has the best digital marketing to get you to be persuaded to use the product. But you need to look for partners and people that have used the product, real world experience, where you can actually make an informed decision. And we actually fell upon building Worker by chance. We were in this dilemma. Myself and my co-founder Tim, we launched a remote first staffing and recruitment business back in 2014. And in the first year, it was very, very euphoric. We were all having this great feeling about working from anywhere. And we would use Google Meet to connect and meet up. We would meet once a month in a physical location, just to ensure we're having that in-person experience as well. But after about a year, when we got into double digits of staff, we realized that actually this was starting to get quite lonely, and we were starting to get isolated from everything that we were so used to having in a physical space. So we went looking for solutions, as you would, looking for virtual office software, working together software, and literally there was nothing out there. I mean, and the concept really of working in a connected way from anywhere didn't exist either. There was remote working, but we really didn't want to be remote. We wanted to be together. So we wanted together working, but we couldn't find anything which was giving us together working. But you could search for remote working, and that will give you the traditional products like Slack, Microsoft Teams, and a bunch of other products that will allow you to do that. So we couldn't find anything was the simple answer. And that's where we put our thinking caps on and said, could we actually design something of our own, that could give us some of those elements that we're missing now from our office environment when we're not in the physical office. And that's where the evolution of our product came about. But I couldn't find one. If I went searching for one, I couldn't really find one for love nor money. And I think now, because of the pandemic, the noise of working from home, remote working, hybrid working has grown so fast that even when you do a search now, you have to search so hard to try to pick out what is the solution from all the noise about remote working, hybrid working, working from anywhere, working from home. There's just so much content out there now, it's made it even harder. So, I'd sort of throw it back to the audience and, ask for inputs in how they go about, looking for solutions. But the partner networks, I think, are definitely key. We've worked with a lot of partners just to help us educate and ensure that we can understand what the pain points are, because we don't know it all. We're also looking to learn. And when we're working with our partners, that's where we get to learn a bit more from their customers and also their years of experience in the different software applications they've been using.
Yeah, you've talked about Googling things, and I'm slightly conscious now that we've probably got a load of people who are Googling worker and finding pictures of people with yellow hard hats. So if anyone is looking for worker, it's WURKR. And yeah, and you should be able to find information about that. I was, I've looked at some of the screenshots and video demos of the worker platform, and if I was discussing it as well with my partner over dinner a couple of nights ago, and I described it as, well, it's kind of The Sims, but in a professional environment for the office. Is that a fair description of it if you have to come up with one sentence?
Yeah, look, I think it is a fair description. And I think what's even a closer comparator that we used to be compared to, and certainly in the early days pre-pandemic, was almost a bit like Second Life. If you ever came across the product Second Life, it was this virtual world of people walking around, and then corporates actually started using Second Life to do recruitment drives and events and so on, when online events were not really known as a thing about being online events. So yeah, you're right. It is this visual representation of people or workers, moving around the screen from an office to an office, and you can walk over to them. You can knock on their door if their door's locked. You can tap them on the shoulder just to grab their attention. But when you're together, your video and audio comes on, and it's like you're just sitting there with them, with either that one person or the other colleagues, that are in the same room. But the whole idea of it was, how do you replicate that real world feeling of people working with you in a live environment, rather than just you yourself behind your laptop or your desktop in a room locked away and only connecting with your colleagues in a premeditated way. So that premeditated way is either sending them an email, grabbing them on a messenger somewhere, or booking a meeting. And we all know how long it takes to book a meeting. I mean, it'd probably be 15, 20 minutes back and forward, finding a slot in a particular day, then sending out the invite. So we wanted to make it intuitive, but very immersive. So you're right, Sims is a very, very good example, because the whole concept of that was real characters actually moving around on the screen in real time. And we wanted to make it real time.
So in Worker, you quite literally start by building a floor plan and building the floors within your virtual office, don't you? And then you can assign the offices and assign the boardrooms and the hot desks and all of these spaces within the office. And then the people bring themselves. So you log in and quite literally sit at a desk or in a meeting room, and you move around this virtual space in almost in reality. And I guess this is where we start talking about hybrid rather than remote working, because you are physically located remotely, but for all intents and purposes, you're existing during the day in this virtual world. I think it looks really cool, and I'm yeah, I'd quite like to spin it up as a momentum and see how much traction we get with it.
No,
I think it's a
absolutely.
great idea.
No, perfect. Yeah, and you're spot on. Yeah, that is the whole concept of it. We're not quite there where you can build your own office, so we're the ones building it for you. So we're taking the headache out of building the offices for you as well. But there's various different shapes and sizes of spaces that you can have. And you know what? Because it's online and because it's technology and because it's software, you can actually start really experimenting with these things. And you can start creating spaces which are quite fun. Having a garden office, where you're actually in a forest, or you could have different sections in a forest. So, you're still online, but it just turns it into a bit more of a fun space. We've got our design team working on, believe it or not, spaceships and cruise ships and things like that. So if you wanted to work, and zoom out on a map and go onto a ship sitting in the middle of the ocean, you could go and do that. So it's actually the first steps for us, linking it to the metaverse, and what is now a buzzword in terms of the metaverse. We absolutely see this as a world, in Worker, which we're calling Workerverse, where you could connect with other businesses as well as your own, when they have created their own space within Workerverse. So consider it a bit like Google Maps. So if you zoom out on a Google map and you start zooming in, you can be able to start looking at organizations that have office buildings. You could click into their website and you can see their website. So we're looking at, replicating a world map with all our organizations that have signed up. And we've got over 1 million subscribers now around the world, so we've got quite a decent audience where we can connect people and have a fairly good presence on a global map now. But it's super interesting. Things you can't do in the physical space, you can easily play around online, because you can create the space to look and feel like anything you want it to look and feel like.
You must get some objections to Worker as a solution. The obvious one I'm thinking, it could be completely wrong, but I'm thinking it sounds like it's quite heavily gamified, and maybe that's another buzzword to throw at you. And are there objections around the fact that it is very gamified? Is there a place for these gamified solutions within the workplace?
Great. I mean, great analogy again, right? I mean, look, we've been very focused, and keeping this away from gamified, pixelated characters, anything that is too, I guess, too much fun orientated. Ours is strictly enterprise grade, and we don't have pixelated characters. It's a floor plan of an office. It's just where you can take your thoughts, I think, is the interesting part of it. And like any business, you can have two worlds, right? You can have the corporate, enterprise, very work orientated space, and then you've got the more fun orientated spaces, and there's a clear demarcation between the two, a bit like a bit like some of our physical offices these days. You have sections which are very social, where you have pool tables, table tennis tables, chill out zones. Google had these sleep pods and stuff like that, on their campuses. So I think there's a nice marry between the two, but the product is really focused with work in mind, but ensuring that we don't over gamify it. There are some products out there which are very much focused on, sort of animated talking heads and pixelated images of people moving around the screen, or avatars of yourself, on the screen. Worker's not about that. I mean, Worker is very much about, I would say, professional grade. It's an image of yourself as a person, on the avatar, rather than a pixelated or an avatar that's been created by you. So it's not really emoticon or anything like that. It's actually your face on there. So we're very careful, not letting our creativity sort of overtake the real use case of this. So you're absolutely right. You can be defined as gamified, but we're anything but gamified. We've stayed away from gamification. That's probably an element we could add into it at a later stage. But the focus is how do we replicate those physical office environments, keep it fun, but keep it very, very corporate in terms of how you stay connected, working, productivity, collaboration, and those types of things.
You mentioned other products while you were describing that. Tell me about competition, or are you genuinely creating a totally new category?
Look, 4 years ago, or 4.5 years ago, when we first started out, there was genuinely nobody, in this space. I think there was a handful, one or two I can probably remember at that time. One isn't about. The second one, I think, retrenched and went in a slightly different direction. But the whole pandemic did started surfacing quite a few applications out there in the marketplace. And look, we've all got our own unique approach and how we're going about things. One in particular is very animated, and it's not about having a real person on screen. It's more about animated avatars that you're interacting with. Others are just purely on the collaboration, and you don't get full visibility of everybody in the space. Others are more three-dimensional environments, but three-dimensional, I guess on a browser-based experience is quite draining for your local machine. So that's also not a good thing for a corporate environment. So I think there's now a dozen or so, if not probably getting close to 24 players that are starting to get involved in this space. I'd like to think we've all got our own unique place, but you know what? A dozen, 24 around the world in a space which is 70-80% hybrid now. I think we've all got our real, our little markets that we can really tap into and make the most of. Most of them we know, most of them we talk with on a regular basis, and most of us have all got the same challenges in terms of scalability, stability, and keeping the product evolving over time to ensure it's giving the user the best experience. And we're all doing great things. We're working together to shape this space called WebRTC, which is essentially being able to have an audio video application running on a browser. So that's the space that we all tend to be working on off the back of.
And competition's so healthy. Competition ultimately is what fuels innovation.
Absolutely. Yeah, spot on.
If we were to focus this back onto our community of technology partners and the MSP community, how are technology partners trying to solve hybrid working, doing that right now?
Oh, that's a tough question. We're just starting to work with partners to help us grow our user base and start getting the word of Worker out to a larger audience, because there's only so much we can do with our own digital marketing, with our own outbound reach. So we're starting to work with partners to leverage their customer base, to leverage their partners, and if we can work with the partners that they already have, in their books. So what are they doing about being able to support? I think it's like everybody else. They're on the lookout for solutions which can help people working in this new hybrid working way. And we're just one small piece in the big jigsaw. There's hardware solutions, like headsets that you and I are wearing. There are video solutions to ensure we have better connectivity, or we have green screen solutions where you're trying to get the backgrounds taken away from us. So there's a whole bunch of things, and then there's a lot of new technology which is being developed, like artificial intelligence, right? So could you have almost an AI-enabled human being in the space that could be your support person that you could go on speak to, like Alexa, and you could say, can you go on, help me find this information, and that virtual assistant will be able to help you with that. So there's a whole bunch of products and solutions out there which are starting to stitch together, and whether they're being stitched together by companies like ourselves to ensure we integrate into our product, or whether we work with partners, like MSPs or technology partners to say, how can we work and benefit your partners to connect this to your network? I think that's where everybody's starting to look at how can we benefit this whole evolution of working in this way, because hybrid working is here to stay. And then you've got I think the big challenge, I think, is still, how do you still easily connect the physical and the remote worker together? It's easy to have two endpoints. If you've got two endpoints where two individuals are sitting in two different locations, that's fairly easy to do. But if you've got a team sitting in a physical location, you've got 10 people sitting in one physical location, you've got 7 or 8 people in different geographic locations, the geographic 7 to 8 can connect using products like this, but the 7 to 8, are they likely to want to connect with a visible application on their screen at the same time as their normal working space? Is still something all of us are working on, because we cannot replicate a physical desk online. It's still very difficult. How do we replicate that physical desk and that touchy-feely experience around that physical desk, because we are still online? So I think that's it's something that does keep me awake, right? We speak to big corporates, and I get asked similar questions quite often. Well, I've got 1,000 people sitting in a physical office. Now, what do? Do I connect all 1,000 people on something like Worker, or do I only connect the teams that need to connect with parties that are outside of our physical space? And my answer to them is, well, you're not going to have 1,000 people sitting at one desk, are you? You're going to have 1,000 people probably across different zones within a building. Now, are those zones working together in some way? If they are, then you could create zones in Worker where you're then connecting those distributed teams on screen as well, as because you can't move them to a physical space or working together. So we could connect distributed teams in the same building, as well as connecting distributed teams in geographic locations. So then that's where it becomes quite interesting. But I think that's still a lot of work still needs to go into that space, because hybrid is exactly that. You're in the office part of the time and you're working from somewhere else part of the time. Now, is it the same solution for both? For me, I don't know quite yet. I think we're still working towards that. It's easier for us to enable the person that's not in the physical space right now, and enable anybody who's geographically disconnected from the physical team. That's easier to do, or to connect two geographically distributed people to feel like they're working in the same space. That's a lot easier to do. Then the other challenge is when you start working with large corporates, is getting into their infrastructure, firewalls, sitting behind certain security issues that they may have, the whole video on, video off. How do you enable that? And then you have hardware which is controlled by the organization. Does it allow video and audio apps to be running through browsers easily? So there's a whole layer of other challenges that you face as well, which I think the partners and the MSPs.
That's exactly where the technology partners come in.
Absolutely, because they're very experienced at that, right? Now they understand it, they know the pain points already. But us as the software vendors building new products, being innovative about what we're doing, that's where we're going to find the challenges are. We don't have the teams that the MSPs and the partners have, to be able to tell us that these are the things you're going to need to tick box and get right and get in front of. And then you've got compliance and I guess the vulnerabilities for financial organizations, legal organizations, data protection and stuff like that. Now, I think we're all doing a great job in trying to understand that, but it's a minefield because it changes all the time as well. So how do you keep get your head above the water with that stuff all the time? I think that's a critical piece where partners and certainly the MSPs can help us working with. We're just starting on that journey. We started off with partnerships, and now we're looking at the MSP or the vendor relationships that we can build out. We started our very first I guess, vendor relationship was with Agora. So we use Agora as our video engine to enable us to be able to scale, have a stable connection, and be able to ensure we provide reliability, because that space is changing so quickly. So we didn't want to be continually developing that. So we worked with Agora, and that gave us huge insights into how we need to adapt our product to ensure it works effectively with customers that are large scale, that Agora are used to. So you're absolutely right. I mean, that's an important piece.
Normally, when I'm speaking to somebody like you that's developing a really innovative SaaS solution, it's pretty obvious to me which functional leader within the end customer business is likely to be looking for this kind of solution. You know, I mean, off the top of my head, I'm thinking, is it the HR leaders that are looking for these hybrid solutions? Is it the CEO? You know, which functional leader is most likely to contact our technology partners looking for a hybrid working solution?
I wish I had the answer in a simple way, and I think for us as worker and myself, you know, I'm relatively new to the SaaS technology space. You know, I've always been involved with technology, but this journey that I've taken over the last 5 years has been relatively new to me. And I think that's one of the things that does keep me awake, you know, to absolutely target. We've gone through various different evolutions of I guess tagging the persona of who we should be, you know, getting in front of first. And to some degree, we've become quite reactive, as you do, I think, as an early stage startup. But more and more, we've realized that this is definitely sitting at a higher decision making level. It is very important to HR, because there are so many elements of how people work that are important to the HR function and the team functions, like culture, I would say elements of mental health, which you know, the pandemic has posed a massive problem, you know, for us as sort of working from home, and also health and safety, you know, for the environment, and ensuring, you know, where we're following, you know, very close, because it's great pushing everybody sitting, you know, working from home, but there's so many elements that are very controlled when you're in a physical office run by an organization, rather than a space that you've created at home, and you may be sitting at the end of your bed, you know, with a laptop on the end of your knee, you know, trying to get a headset on and having a conversation. You know, I can only imagine, you know, so there's some of the health and safety issues that do come out. So I think it's super important for HR, but we've often found, and partly because our early adopters were startups and SMEs, that we were definitely speaking higher up the decision-making chain, almost to the CEOs of the business, or the business owners and the founders of the businesses that were making these decisions, and then filtering it back down the chain. But it's really, I mean, it's anybody from the end user, you know, to the person sitting at the top, because sometimes these things start with just the end user. End user sees a product, you know, they try it out and they see a need, they try it out with a small team, and they take it to maybe their manager, they take it to HR takes it to the business owner. So it's a never-ending up and down, I guess, sliding approach, you know. But because we're a technology solution, often, you know, the technology head or the business head is usually where we can influence it far greater, because they tend to understand the bigger need, rather than just being a people need. Because the bigger need, infrastructure, cost benefits, you know, if you can reduce seats in a physical office, you can have people working closer to home, you can hire people in multiple locations around the world, so you're not restricted to one location hiring of talent. So I think the decision, you know, to work in a hybrid way and have a solution that keeps you connected and seamless and working in this way, doesn't just touch HR and people, it touches operations, finances, and ultimately your strategy in how you're going to grow as a business globally. So that's where I think we've been able to influence it slightly higher up the chain, but super important for HR as well.
Yeah, I think increasingly the problem of which functional leaders are responsible for which technology solutions is becoming very difficult for technology partners and MSPs to manage. Traditionally, they would just speak to the business owner, and the business owner would be the one that would commission the services around the servers and networks and PCs, and to some extent your solutions like Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace. But I think today the business owners themselves don't necessarily understand the needs of the other leaders within their business. And so I think what you've explained about this up and down, round and round kind of decision-making chain in terms of hybrid solutions like Worker really reflects that. I mean, I think one of the biggest challenges that the technology partner community needs to solve is how they get into the room where the conversations are being had at that high level. You know, how do they stop only listening to the CEO or business owner and start having regular conversations with the marketing leader, with the finance leader, with the HR leader, and stop those functional leaders having to go out to Google, as we've discussed, and find solutions that are probably not fit for purpose and won't actually solve the problem, but go and find them themselves.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, when the HR leader goes out and finds some totally not fit for purpose alleged hybrid working solution that's actually basically just Zoom, it becomes the technology partner's problem anyway. Yeah. So, you know, we've got a real struggle as an industry in understanding and working out how to have the right conversations with enough stakeholders within the business to be able to help really guide their technology strategy. Talking about things like Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace, you know, obviously as a reformed engineer myself, I'm immediately thinking, okay, so what other tools is the typical hybrid working business using, and what do they maybe need something like Worker to integrate with? You know, does it integrate with the likes of Microsoft 365, Azure AD for that authentication, or is it at the moment a standalone product?
Yeah, look, and we don't we don't look to replicate any other products or solutions that already exist out there. And in fact, look, we're looking at integrations to the best of breed. We've recently done a Google integration. Yeah, we're working with Google Cloud and with the Google Stack at the moment. So we haven't started investigating the Microsoft Stack, but we know the Microsoft Stack is also really important for us as well. So for the moment, you know, we've integrated to Slack and to Google. Just for, I guess, stickiness, because the customers that we have been working with have been using Google and Slack. So at the moment, most of our developments are customer driven, rather than, you know, what is the industry norm. I'm sure as we grow as a business, you know, we'll start looking at integrating with the Microsoft Stack and other solutions. In fact, we had a very interesting conversation with SAP. Which I guess everybody knows about, because it tends to be an enterprise grade, very expensive, product which you need to have in premise, right? And it's typically been in on-premise installation. But with the SAP Cloud, their adoption to get it to a wider audience, to target SMEs as well as the large enterprise grade organizations, we came onto SAP's radar, and they actually invited us along to say, why don't you be part of one of our cohorts to develop this on the SAP Cloud, and we can help you to develop this and then get it out to our customers. So that's a really good example of a juggernaut technology business that is looking to work now with smaller software vendors and applications to take it to their SME and larger customers, because they need new solutions, to be able to work in this new world. So as much as the Microsoft, the Googles of this world are great in terms of what they provide, it's the small new innovative companies that are coming up with these great ideas, to enable. And some of these enabling ideas are category defining. Where do you position them? How do you get them in front of the right person in the right organization? But for us, it's about partnering and integrating to the best of breed. We're looking at a solution right now where we could actually bring somebody in from a Zoom connection into a worker room. So even if you've invested heavily into Zoom, you could still use Worker as your front end user interface for visibility, real-time engagement, and just feeling connected and together. But you could quite easily just come in and use a Zoom video session to be in a worker room. So I think one, there's a lot more products coming to market, so it's harder and harder to differentiate yourself. But any company needs to certainly look at integrating to solutions that have already been adopted by large customers, because it's very hard to actually get them to move away when they've invested so much time, money, and effort into these large scale solutions. But there's always room to provide a layer of enablement or a layer of user interface to ensure you give them a better experience when they're using these large scale applications. And that's where Worker comes in place. We're about the user experience. How does the user feel when they're not working in the physical location, and what can we do to make them feel comfortable, connected, part of the team, visible, and in real time. That's really the key elements of the focus that we're on.
I'm going to turn direction slightly here, find out a little bit about you personally, Annil. What's the best bit of swag you've ever been given at a roadshow or kind of industry event? For me, it's usually the socks. I've got a drawer full of fantastic pairs of socks. In the old days, people were giving away free pens and various other bits of single-use plastic, which I think is now considered such a big no-no. Whereas a pair of cotton socks is genuinely useful. I've got some great pairs. What's the favorite thing you've been given?
Well, look, I think the favorite thing is also always the thing that you're going to use the most, right? So I think the favorite thing is I got a set of Echo Buds given in one of the swag bags, and it's something I use very, very often. So I love using different headsets. I've probably got a dozen or so different headsets. I never had Echo Buds. Pleasantly surprised, so it wasn't a product that I probably would have gone out and bought, but I got those. But when you say probably the most exciting swag bag, that I've ever had the chance of being given, and it was slightly skewed because one of the businesses I used to work with was but yeah, there you go.
I'll just pull out from under my desk various pairs of got some Titan HQ socks. I've got some Datto socks. Clearly tell I was at an event.
I have to say I haven't received any socks to date, right? So you're clearly luckier than I am.
Caps as well.
Let's get the best swag bag I've ever had, and I used to be part of a platinum partner to Salesforce. So we were part of a business. I went out to the big Salesforce event that happens in San Francisco, and because we were a platinum partner, I mean the swag bag was, I won't tell you what's in it because it was super expensive swag bag. So that was by far the best swag bag I've ever had from any place I've ever gone to. However, we used to spend a lot of money with them. So we were a platinum partner, and we used to give them business and they used to give us business. So I think it was well deserved. But Dreamforce, for Salesforce, by far is one of the best events I've ever been to, and certainly the best swag bag I've ever had as well.
Awesome. So obviously this podcast is being sponsored and enabled by Zementum, which is a sales acceleration platform. Can you tell me about one of your most memorable sales?
Oh, I think probably my most memorable sale ever was my hardest sale, and it wasn't directly in Worker, and it wasn't in the technology software or platform space. It was actually in my days when I was an SAP recruiter, and I used to recruit expats for projects around the world. And I remember finding a project opportunity in Dubai, and we had a consultant who we found who was working in I think, Miami at the time for an SAP project. He was Scottish. He was working in Miami, and we found this project in Dubai. He was super interested in wanting to go to this project. It took us about 2 months in negotiations, but the sale ended up where we shipped, the client agreed for us to ship this consultant's Corvette from Miami to Dubai for so that he could take it with him, because they were both left-hand drive, and it was something, it was his treasure, yeah, his treasured sort of purchase of his. And it took a lot of toing and froing. It was a big ticket sale that we made. I mean, it was probably close to about $500,000 a year in terms of just one particular person working on that project. But it stands out in that particular way for me. But there's been many sales that stand out for many different reasons, but that's one that always stands out. And I always talk about it whenever I talk to any people in the sales team, because the work and effort that went into it, and I guess the persistence to keep on ensuring you negotiated something which was right for both parties, and you would never have ordinarily have thought about, trying to ship somebody's Corvette to actually sweeten the deal. And in the bigger scope of things, the cost of shipping was only going to be about $2,500, but the smile on the consultant's face that he had his treasured possession taken to Dubai with him, was better than actually doing the sale. So that's probably my most memorable sale I've ever done.
I love that. I hope to someday be sent abroad with my car. Yeah, and I love trying to extract these little sales tips out of people who are experienced ultimately at selling. Yeah, and how did you clarify that this was going to be a really great choice for the client? What made it worth, or how did you communicate the value in what you were able to deliver there?
I think it was, I mean, one, it was a very rare skill. So, when you've got a rare skill, I think the buying power and the selling power, of both parties become a lot clearer and a lot harder, to negotiate. So the first thing, it was rare. When you got something rare, it's always harder, to get it to work, because everybody knows it's rare, and there's going to be a high price, and there's going to be obviously a price that we need to negotiate. But ultimately, even though the sweetener was, the Corvette in this particular situation, I'm pretty sure this person would have joined the project anyway, because it was just a super exciting project. It was one of a kind. It was for the largest oil and gas company, in Dubai at that time. So it was probably the most prestigious of projects you could have got to get involved in. So as I guess a salesperson, it was great to be working with the best of breed projects, and then to be able to find this really unique skill sitting, across the world on a project somewhere else. So it gives you some real personal pleasure, as well as connecting to parties which absolutely got what they wanted out of it. There was a unique fit. And as I said, the sweetener, whether it happened or not, I think he probably still would have taken, the role anyway. But it was just nice from a personal perspective then to be able to do something to say thank you, and to both parties, and say, great, this was done. So I think for me, it was always the element of rareness, where you got something connected together, and it was a hard to find skill.
And at the very least, it's a fantastic story.
It's a great story.
Last question then. Who else should be on this show? Someone that's working really hard, innovative, that is going to teach our technology partners a lot.
Oh, that's a brilliant question. And you know what? The one person that comes to mind to me all the time, in this space that we are operating, and I've got huge respect for, in terms of what the company and this person has achieved. And he's got a super interesting story. I've listened to him a couple of times now, so talk about his journey and the need for the product he built. So the company is Hopin, which is the online events company, which is literally only 3 or 4 years old, and they're a unicorn business. They've done phenomenally well as a business, from a very young business about 4 years ago. And the founder, Johnny Beaufort, is, quite a unique individual And I've known him, or I got to know him when he was on this journey, because we started our journey around the same time. And I remember speaking to him very, very early doors when he was starting out, and we were just sort of, shooting the breeze about something. And I got a chance to speak to him then, but I've seen him since, and I've heard the full story since. Fantastic story, brilliant product, an unbelievable journey is Johnny Beaufort and Hopping.
Johnny, if you're listening, we're coming for you. And perhaps, Annil, it'd be great if you can put me in touch with Johnny after this.
I'm more than happy to do so. Yeah,
see if he'll come on the show.
Yeah, definitely.
Where can people find you if they want to find out more? You're on LinkedIn, I assume?
Yep, I'm in all the usual channels. I mean, we're on LinkedIn. You can go to Worker on LinkedIn. We're spelled very uniquely, so you won't be able to miss us. It's WURKR, and the website is WURKR.io. You'll find us on LinkedIn. You'll find us on Instagram. You'll find us on Twitter. You can find me personally. So I'm always keen on connecting with people. So anybody wants to connect up, I'm more than happy to give you my 2 cents worth of my experience if it helps anybody, but always keen to learn from others.
Thank you very much, Annil. That's it, everyone. If you learned something today or laughed, please do tell someone about the show. Thank you very much, and see you next time.
Great. Thank you, Ben. I really appreciate you recommending me to come onto this. I've had some fun, and some great questions.
Great. Thanks, Annil.
Thanks for listening. If you want to get more from today's show, check out the show notes and share this episode with a friend. Earn, grow, and manage revenue quickly and cost-effectively in the Zomentum Revenue Platform. To learn more, check out Zomentum.com. See you in the next episode.